Welcome to the webinar on the iNTD. I'm Nancy Doherty, the Tech Tool Manager here at the National Rural Transit Assistance Program, more commonly known as National RTAP. So the webinar is on the Integrated National Transit Database System for Rural Agencies, commonly known as the Rural iNTD. We have recently updated it to be very, very user-friendly and include asset data for all rural and asset recipients and subrecipients. So this webinar will reintroduce the iNTD because it's been a while since we've done a webinar on the iNTD, provide several demonstrations of how it's used, offer some detailed instructions on performing peer comparison and trend analyses, which I think is one of the coolest parts of the iNTD. And then finally provide a discussion on how the tool and the data can be used by state DOTs and transit managers. As always, just a little bit of an introduction about National RTAP. We are a technical assistance center. We're funded through the FTA, or the Federal Transit Administration, through the Section 5311 program for rural areas and tribal areas. We provide no-cost training, technical assistance, and webinars on a variety of topics for rural and state RTAP programs. We're guided by a review board made up of half DOT staff, of which one of our panelists, Kristen Haar, is a member, and have transit providers. And basically, they're our boots on the ground. They help us prioritize what topics we need to develop and work on. Everything we offer can be found on our website, nationalrtap.org. And you can also reach out to us with any questions. We may not know the answer, but trust me, we have the most amazing resource managers who will find the information for you. So go to the ends of the earth to answer your questions. Just one more slide on National RTAP. There's just so much here. Sometimes it's good to break it out in the categories that we generally think of our services are as training, including e-learning courses and webinars, basic information in the form of a tech brief or a toolkit, which is on our website, the technology tools, the one for procurement, general transit feed specification builder, developing websites, and we have a great tool for cost allocation as well. Peer network and assistance. So I'm going to introduce our speakers today. Dr. Albert Gahn is a professor of transportation engineering at the Florida International University in Miami. He's been the developer of more than 20 transportation software systems. Dr. Gahn first started to work on integrating the National Transit Database in the early 1990s when he was a graduate student. I had no idea you were doing this for so long, Albert. A graduate student at the University of Florida. And at FIU, he and his team began to develop the Integrated National Transit Database, iNTD, system in the early 2000s, and has continued to improve and maintain the system ever since. Kristen Haar serves as the Public Transit Director, directing and coordinating the work of public transit team. Kristen is a member of the National RTAP Review Board, which is we're very grateful for, and serves on the AASHTO MTAP Steering Committee. Kristen joined the Iowa DOT's public transit system in February of 2020, Kristen, I think, as a compliance and training officer. Prior to joining Iowa DOT, Kristen was the executive director of the Heart of Iowa Regional Transit Agency and also worked as a transportation planner at the Des Moines Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. So we have two very talented panelists with us today. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Albert, who's going to share his screen and tell you about the iNTD, and then follow that with a demonstration of it. Albert.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Okay, you can see my screen.
Perfect. Yep.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And I guess good morning to those of you who are in the West Coast, and I hope you can hear me clearly. So today I divide my presentation into three parts. The first part, I will introduce the NTD program and give a quick overview, and also go through some data applications and some key timeline of the NTD. Also talk about what data are available in the NTD, especially for the rural system. And then we'll introduce the iNTD system, also talk about why we developed the system, and also talk about what data are available in the system, and also some of the major system features that are included. And I will do a quick overview of the peer grouping method, probably 30 seconds of it. And at last, I will do some demonstrations of the iNTD. I assume most of you are probably more interested in the demonstrations. And so I will go to the first part as quickly as I can, and we'll show you how to access a system if you are not an existing users yet. And we'll try to go through as many of the features as we time for. Okay. So I'm sure most of you are already somewhat familiar with the National Transit Database, and it's without a doubt, it's the single most important national database we have for the US transit industry. And if you are an agency, you want to receive the FTA grant fund, especially 5311, I think, I forgot the numbers. So if you have to report, you are required to report the data to the NTD program. And so what FDA does is they receive the data from the different agency, and it's collected every year. And the FDA will turn around and put the data together, summarize them and clean them, and then release the data that they can release. They don't release all the data. So this data become very useful that we can use for transit performance analysis, for example. If you want to learn more about the NTD database, and you can go to the FTA website. We'll have some more introductions, and here is the URL. Okay, so moving on, what are some of the data applications for some users? They might be interested in just looking up some data for specific agencies, and for some other users, they may want to go more in-depth, looking at the data and do some analysis, just to find out, for example, what are some of the areas that they have been doing fine, and what are some areas that might need some improvement. And the analysis will help to provide some insight, and also to help probably raise some questions, hopefully lead to some management actions. There are basically two types of analysis that are commonly done, and one is a trend analysis, in which you try to compare, to look at the year-to-year changes of some key performance measure. And many agencies do adopt some key performance measures. And so in this case, you try to look at the performance trends. And some agency might like to have a little bit more reference, and so have some baselines that you can compare with some other agencies. You want to look at your trend line and compare to other agencies to see if your trends are similar or better or worse than others. So, for example, in this particular case, so this is a peer comparison chart, right? And showing the operating expense per unlinked passenger trips. And you can see there are 5 systems here. And you have 4 systems that are kind of stable, and then you have another system kind of with some unexpected increase of the value over the years, and then you might want to look at why is the reason why you have an increase compared to the other agencies. So some key NTD program timeline. The NTD program was first started in 1978. The data was first collected in 1979, and but the first year of data that was published was in 1981. And when the program first started, it was known as the Section 15 data. And if you are old enough like myself, you will know it's called Section 15 data. And in 1995, FDA renames the Section 15 data to NTD, and the name has been with us since then. In 2006, then the FDA also required the rural agency to collect data, and the first year of data that were collected was 2007. even though it's a 2006 data was also collected, but FTA did not release the data, and simply because the first year data was not as reliable. So more recently in 2018, as a result of the FAST Act, so there's FTA expanded the asset data to include additional data. And so what data are available in the for rural system? There are basically two levels of data that you can get from the FTA website. And first is the recipient, the direct recipients. Who are the direct recipients? They are the state or the tribe system, or also some asset group sponsor. And then you also have sub-recipient. The sub-recipients are basically the individual transit service provider. And these are the list of data that are available in the NTD, including agency identification operating system, revenue sources, service, safety, revenue, vehicles, maintenance facilities. And this list of data are originally released starting from 2007. And as I mentioned, the expanded version of the TAM data now include also transit stations and facility inventory, service vehicle, and asset performance targets. And obviously for rural system, they are all considered reduced reporter. You don't report all the detail, especially for things like operating system. If it's an urban system, you will have all the details, but rural system will just have one value. Basically, it's a total operating expenses. So where can you get the data? You can get the data from the FTA website, and this is a website, and I will just go straight to the website, and this is when you come to this website. So you can, if you look at the data product, and there are basically 5 data product. So first you have the annual data tables, and in this tables you have some key performance measures that are included, but it's data for each year, and you also have some time series data that include multiple years of data in the same file, but it doesn't have all the data. Will be just some key data that they have. And next, you have the annual database, and this is considered the most complete data that we actually get the data from this data product. And so what we do is we take the data from here and incorporate it into our system. And the last two are only for the urban system, right? It's the monthly ridership data and the monthly safety time data. So if you look at here, you can select the specific years of data that you need. And obviously, we only have data up to 2021, and 2022 and 2023 are only for the monthly data and the monthly safety data. So if you want to get the data from here, and so for example, if I'm interested in the complete data and from the annual database, and from 2001, 2021, and apply. And as you can see here, right, and you have the different data that are stored in different files. For example, one of the file will be the revenue sources, so you can click on it. So if you are interested in the detailed revenue source data, so if you open the files, it's a spreadsheet file. It look like this, and you can see that it's somewhat difficult to read. The reason is because okay, so it's actually a multi-dimensional data, right? And so for just one system, you get multiple records, and because you have different funding categories, and as one dimensions and also another dimensions for every funding categories. You also have the fund expended on capital and fund expended on operations, and also fund earned during the entire period, right? And across, then you can see all the variables that you have for the agency, right? And you can see the data are all combined, both urban. Okay, it doesn't allow me to edit. Okay, so the rural data and urban data are all combined together, but in our system, we divide them. The urban data are in the urban iNTD. In our rural system, we'll have the rural iNTD. All right, so going back, as I just showed you, and this is how you can get the data from the FTA website, and you can see that it can be quite difficult if you are going to get the data from the FTA website, because the data, as you can see, they are stored in separate files for different years, and also the data formats are normally not very easily understood, and the format may change from year to year. So if you're going to do a performance analysis, as I just show you the chart and what it's going to take. So for every of these data points, basically you will have to open two files, right? Because there will be a file that you need to get for the operating expense, and also there will be a separate file that you're going to have to get from the for the unlinked passenger trips. And if you are going to have, in this case, you have 5 systems here, and basically you have to grab the data for each of the 5 systems, and they will be just for 1 year. And then you will have to open another set of files for the next year. And in this case, you have 6 or 7 years, and it's going to take a long time if you are going to use the data from the FTA website. So what we do is and here come the our system, and there's a reason we developed our system. And what we did was we took all the data and we put them, combine all of them into a single database, and we provide an interface for the user to easily identify and select the agencies, and also to select the data variables. And the system provides a number of visualization tools, and you can view the data quickly on the NTD form and on some standard reports. And you can create some cross table very quickly, and also you can display some charts, and the system also provides some functions to allow you to export data, to sort the data, and to adjust for inflations for some of the financial variables. And the system also allow you to view the definitions of the different variables. You can get the definition very quickly. And the system, our system also include the recipient level data. And that's what that you cannot get from the FTA website at the recipient level. And the FTA website only includes some agency identifications informations. It doesn't have the aggregate data at the recipient level. And our system also includes some pre-calculated performance measures. And what are some of the measures? Basically, we have 2 types of measures. The first one is the efficiency measures. And basically, for this measure, we try to see how much resources that we have consumed in order to produce a certain amount of output. We also have the a set of effectiveness measures, and in this case, we see how well our service have been provided to our customer. We include performance measures, average speed, average age of fleet, and vehicle revenue mile between accident. Of course, there are more variables. These are just some examples. So just a bit of the timeline of our system. The iNTD was first developed in 2000, but the first edition was released in year 2000. So it was part of the Florida Transit Information System, and FDOT was the sponsor for the system. And at the beginning, our system only included the urban agency. Obviously, the rural data was not available until 2007. But our system was first developed in 2014, and the sponsor was the national RTAP. And after a year, we were able to release the system that allowed users to also access the rural data. So in 2019, we also added the peer grouping methods, and most recently, we also expanded the database to include the complete TAM data, and also included the asset-only agencies. Very quickly, the peer grouping method and was actually developed by Peterson under the direction of Paul Ryers and his team. And in this, and basically the method helped to identify peers, and what it does is calculate a so-called average liner scores based on the following factors. And if you are more interested in, if you are interested in more details, and you can always go to a report. Here is a link here, and but you can also access it from our interface. So what I'm going to do is to show how you can access the system. And you can either go to our website directly, or you can go to the RTAP website. And what I'm going to do is to just go there. And if you are not an existing user, and the first thing you want to do is to register so that you can get access to the system. And you can just click here, and it's going to take you to the registration page, and you can read some of the terms and conditions that we have. And if you agree to them, you can just click here, and it's going to give you a form that you can fill out. And once you complete the form, you can just click the register. And so obviously, I'm not going to spend time to go through this. So after you have registered, you will receive a password that will let you access a system. I'm going to go back to the RTAP website, and the page that I just showed you, and you can find it from under resources. And over here, you just click here, ruler iNTD. Okay, so once you have the password, you can log in to the system. I already have a password, and I also make it remember my password, so I don't have to keep entering. And obviously, now it's going to just remember on the specific computer. If you use a new computer, you will have to enter the password again. So here, if I just enter the system. When you first enter the system, you can see that by default, it's going to select the year for you from 2016 to 2021. But if you need to have data from the older years, as you can see, it goes back to 2007. And the final years available is 2021. And we expect FTA will release the data in a couple of months, normally around October. And when we get the data, and we spend about a month or so to incorporate into our system. Just now I mentioned, now in terms of the level of data, you have the so-called recipients, and they are the direct recipient. That can be the state agencies, and typically that will be state DOT. And we also have the tribal system, and also the asset sponsors that has just been added recently. So by default, they are all selected. And if you are interested in just the state agencies, there are 52 here, including some US territory as well, plus the 50 state. So if you are interested in just the tribe, and it's going to list all the tribe system and the tribe agencies. And tribe is a special case, is both a recipient as well as a sub-recipient. Let me just click state. And so what I'm going to do is, let's say if I'm interested in information for specific agencies, and since I'm from Florida, I'll just click FDOT here, and it's going to list all the subrecipients under the FDOT recipient. Okay, I can select any of these subrecipients, and if I want to, if there's agency that you are interested, you know the names. For example, I have Levy County here. I've just pretend I couldn't find it, so I can just quickly type LEVY, and you quickly shortlist and can find the system. So I want to go back to the original list, and I can add more. If you are going to add more system, you need to hold down the control key. I can just select more system. And after you have selected a system, let's say if you're always interested in this 5 system, and you can save it. So let's say my agency, whatever you want to call it. I will say save. And now you can see that if I just clear here, and I can select my agencies, and you can come back. Let's say if I log out and I come back in, and you will have the agency that you have selected because you have saved it. So after you have selected your system, subrecipient in this case, what you can do is you can view the data on the NTD forms. So over here on top, you can see that there are 4 different tabs, and RU20 is the most important form, and it's a subrecipient forms. And we have also RU30 that is at the recipient level. So this is at the subrecipient level. Actually, this day, FTA no longer have RU20 or RU30, right? And in fact, I don't believe there is a concept of form anymore. And for rural reporting system, is the data is under a form called RR, right? It's a RR20 form. I think it stands for reduced reporter, because all the rural systems are considered to be reduced reporter. So on this form, you can see on top, right, you have all the informations about the agencies, right? And you can click on go, and it will take you to the agency website. Oops. Okay, coming back to this. And underneath, you can see that you have the financial informations for operating and capital. And below, you will see that, and this is a section for asset and resources informations, right? And I will include the revenue, vehicle inventory. You have the service vehicles, and these are asset data that has been added recently. And of course, because this is 2016. If you go to a new year, I say put last, and you'll probably see some additional asset data for this particular system. It actually doesn't have. All right, and so now you can see here for this particular system, it has some additional asset data, and there are some service data and also some safety data. So all these are together. And like I mentioned, RU30 is at the recipient level, and basically this is the total for the FDOT, right, for the entire state. So these are the total, and again, these are not the data that you can get from the FTA website, and it's only in our system. We aggregate the data from all the subrecipients. Going back, so you can also display the performance measures under what we call the standard reports quickly. You can select the different system, right? It's going to give you all the data. And again, by default, it starts from 2016. If you want to go back, you can always go back and change, let's say 2015. then you will have 2015 data. And you can also see, compare with some other peers, and you click on peers, and it's going to list the data for each individual subrecipients. And this is for 2021, and you can change the different for different years, and you can also have another report for effectiveness measures. All right, and this is how quickly you can get the data. So if you want to get the if you want to retrieve the data into the tables, or you want to use the data outside our system, you can retrieve the data on our second screen. From this screen, you can see that, let me see how, okay, I have some more time. And as I mentioned, we have data at the recipient level as well as a subrecipient level. And because we have selected some subrecipient, and by default, it's going to choose a subrecipient. Of course, you can also choose a recipient if you are interested in just at the state level, for example. So in this case, I'm going to select the subrecipient. And these are the list of variables that are available. It's a complete list of variable for the urban, for the rural system. As you can see, the first set of data, right, at the beginning, you can see these are the basic informations. So if you are interested in certain variable, or if you want to get all the basic informations, we also have some pre-established variable group that you can just click on the group, and it's going to select all the variables, and you can retrieve the data and very quickly. Going back. All right, and so if you are interested in the service data, and you can just click on it, and you can retrieve all the data. And after I retrieve it, and I can do a cross tables, you can see that I can very quickly get the annual vehicle revenue hours, right? And so the data is also available for different modes, and you can select MB, and it's going to show just the data for MB, or you can do an agency-wide, in this case all, that means all modes. So you can also plot some charts if you want. So this will be a plot of the annual vehicle revenue hours for the Big Bend transit. You can select any of the other system. All right, so going back, and let me also select the operating expense. And some of, I'd like to show you some features that we have. For example, in this case, is in the dollar values. This is a financial variable, and you can also adjust for inflations. And I will select, and you can. The latest available is 2022, and so what this does is, by default, it's going to select the last available data years, and just click apply, and you will see that, and you will quickly convert all the dollars to the equivalence of 2021 value. All right, so that you adjust for the inflations. You can also export the data, and just by clicking Excel, and let me close this, and I guess you didn't like it. Oh, yeah. So you can export any data that you see on the screen. So I hope I have a couple more minutes, and what I want to show you is that we also have the peer grouping method that you can do. And like for example, just now I just randomly select some system. And what happens if you want to do a peer comparison analysis, and what you want to do is to look for systems that are similar to your system, so that the data will be comparable. So in this case, I'll again select Florida, and I'll just go and select assuming that I am interested in looking for some peers for Baker Council on Aging, and just say 5 peers, and you will quickly calculate based on a total of 9 different factors, and it give you an overall score. I
Albert,
believe
just wanted-
anything less than 0.5 is considered to be a good peers. So, and then after you have found your peers, and by default, you always select the first 5, and but for whatever reason, if you don't want this one, and you like this one to be your peers, and obviously lower the score, the closer it is to your system. So I will go and save peers, and in this case, I want to just save the peers that I've selected, and I'll just call it my peers, and I'll give it a name.
Albert, I
Yes.
just give it once. I just want to tell you, I think you can take an extra few minutes if you want to take maybe another 5 minutes. So don't feel
Okay.
rushed.
So
I think we'll be okay.
I set a timer here, and but
It's
my
up to you. Just operate.
it's going off. All right. So I've just saved a group that I call my peers, and instead that you can just go to the system screen to retrieve the subrecipient that I've just saved, right? So go to systems, and you can see here I just saved the peers that I have selected, and I'll say clear. So I clear this and say peers. Okay, this is considered to be peers for Baker Council on Aging. And now I can go, and let's say if I going to compare the operating expense. So I can find that variable very quickly, operating expense per total unlinked passenger trips. I can also select this maybe. So I can also type in trips. So also select these variables. And actually this variable is just a divisions of these 2 variables. So click on this, and you can do across tables. And I think I've shown you this, and you can also select total, and it's going to give you a total of all the subrecipients for the specific years. You can click on average, then it's going to give you an average, and you can also transpose the tables. Okay, so I think these are most of the feature I like to show. So going back, so just an acknowledgement of the project team that from RTAP and my programmers, and as well as the development team from Peterson and Associates. All right, and I will turn over to Christine.
Now, just before Kristen starts, we did have one question in the chat, and that is or actually in the Q&A. Are passengers per hour available for demand response systems? Is that one of the performance measures? And if you're not sure, it's okay.
Passenger per hours, that is not available.
Okay.
There are no passenger information. Yeah, there are no passenger numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Only passenger trip.
Okay.
Yes, and it's not reported. All the NTD data are system-wide, and so all the performance measures are system-wide, and so there are some limitations. The data are not available at the route level, for example, or at the stop level. So if you want to do things like on-time performance measures, and NTD is not the data for you.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trips per hour are available?
trip per hours. So let me just quickly show trips. All right, so you have trip per revenue mile and earning per trip per vehicle hours. All right, so.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't know if this is exactly the same, but we do have the data.
We'll have a few minutes for more questions towards the end of the webinar, but I do want to get Kristen started on her presentation, kind of all of this from the state DOT's perspective. So are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, Chris. So Kristen, why don't you share your screen and unmute yourself and get started? You're still muted, Kristen. You? Do you want? Oh, we lost her.
I am having technical difficulties here. Let me.
Boy, I was in the same situation earlier this morning. You know what? While you're trying to troubleshoot, we can hear you. We can hear you now. But Albert could maybe talk a little bit more about the peer comparison tool. Okay, we're seeing your screen. This is good. And there you are.
Yeah, it all just froze up right when I needed it, of course. All right, let's go back here. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So at the state DOT level, we have a little bit different relationship, I think, with the NTD in that we have the pleasure of inputting all of the NTD data into the database for all of our subrecipients that receive our 5310 and rural 5310 and then our $5311. So we have a little bit different perspective in that we input for all those subrecipients. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of background really fast on what public transit in Iowa looks like. So we have public transit in all of our 99 counties. And so we do the National Transit Database reporting, the DOT, for 14 of our 16 regional systems, multi-county regional demand response systems. 2 of those, the 2 that are left out there, provide services in and out of large urban areas so frequently that they are direct reporters to the NTD because they provide so much urbanized area service at the same time they're doing the rural service. So they are direct reporters. And then we also report for our 7 small urban or small city, I probably should say, fixed route transit systems that serve populations under 50,000. So they receive $5311 to provide those services. So everybody always asks about, and maybe we're getting beyond this, but they ask about the comparison because of the pandemic of our ridership. So back in 2019, statewide, we had 23.8 million rides provided in the state, and that includes all transit systems. So the large urban Des Moines-sized systems down to our smaller rural areas is all combined into 23.8 million rides. But in 2022, our statewide ridership was down to 15.1 million rides. So that's kind of how the pandemic affected us. So hopefully, even in 2023, we will have come back up a little closer to that fiscal 2019 number a little bit more. So we did go as low as a 57% drop in ridership back in 2021. So even 2022, we were already making strides to bouncing back from the pandemic. So here's just a really fast map of our public transit system. We have those multi-county regional systems ranging in size from 3 counties to 10 counties. And then we do have the 19 city systems, urban agencies, so serving cities anywhere over 20,000 in population. So we have the 20 to 50,000 population cities that receive the $5311, and then anything over that, 12 agencies would receive 5307 funding. So we collect a lot of data, as all states probably do. So we collect a lot of different service statistics, ridership, with the elderly and disabled rides broken out, and then a couple different miles, so vehicle miles and revenue miles broken out, revenue hours and operating costs, obviously fare revenue, passenger revenue, same thing, and then tax information. And then for our annual NTD reporting, we do need the number of volunteer drivers, reportable incidents, fatalities, and major injuries. So that's some extra information we collect at the end of the year, but all of the other information we collect on a quarterly basis from all 35 transit agencies. So for our vehicles, we also collect quite a number of data, including obviously the VIN number, and then whatever property ID they've assigned to it. And then they have to report the annual odometer reading and the annual preventive maintenance cost and corrective maintenance costs to us, and the current vehicle condition. We also need the vehicles operated in maximum service for the NTD reporting, and then number of personal vehicles in service. So if you have any volunteer drivers or anything like that using their own vehicles, they report those to us on an annual basis. So like I said, we then, our staff at the DOT reports annually to the NTD on behalf of our 5311 subrecipients, with most of that data listed on the previous two slides reported for each transit agency. And in order to verify all of that, we compare to our payment records for our contract and reimbursements for accuracy, and then also to the previous year's statistics for reasonability. And that process takes several months. So we go back and forth with the transit agencies, but then we input it all into the NTD forms, all the proper forms, and then NTD has an analyst assigned to the Iowa DOT, and we go back and forth with the NTD analyst with all of their questions about our service statistics and other information. So it does take quite a long time, quite a lot of staff time to put all of that in for all of our subrecipients. But a lot of this data actually does serve a dual purpose. So we're not only collecting it for the National Transit Database. We use this data for several other things at the state level. So we use it to distribute our sections 5310 and 11 funding to our rural and urban areas in the state. We use a formula for that that's based on ridership and revenue miles. So that would have been collected through those statistics. And then we also use it to distribute our state money. We do have a little bit of state transit assistance funding that we distribute using a formula that actually uses ridership, revenue miles, operating expenses, and locally determined income factors. So a couple additional factors above and beyond what we use for the distribution of the FTA funds. We also have a process for determining when public transit vehicles will be replaced. And so we use the odometer information. So we have the current mileage, and then we use the current age. And we have a formula that gives a score to each vehicle. And vehicles, once they reach the top of the list, are able to be replaced with as much money as we can possibly go down, given our annual disbursement from FTA or any other discretionary grants we might receive. So we'd use all of this information in a number of different ways. And then also we do have to collect information for our transit asset management. So that's the condition of the buses and the fleets. And also then we go out and look at the facilities as well, but this is all used for our quadrennial update of the transit asset management plan. So collecting it on an annual basis is helpful for that 4-year update. So in looking at the iNTD, I was looking around in that to just see how DOTs might be able to use this information. And one thing that struck me immediately was, well, number one, it has 15 years of data all in one place, which is outstanding. I just think having that much information all in one place for trending and comparison is just really, really useful. But if for states, as you saw, those the states weren't able to use the peer queries that are in the iNTD, but it was pretty simple, actually, just using the regular reports to compare to other states. So I actually went in and selected Iowa's neighboring states. The states that are sharing a border with us, and I was interested in the number of states that are our neighbors that use a portion of their $5311 for state administration. And so I went through and looked. I just was able to select all of our neighboring states at the same time. So then I had 42 entries to sort through and just flip through. It was really, really fast, and looked at the 5311 money that was expended on state administration. And I was able to then compare state to state, year by year, as to who spent money and how much. So that was really interesting information. I think Iowa was the only state of our neighbors that did not use 5311 money on state administration. So, I mean, I'm not saying I have a use for that information right this second, but it could be useful at some point. And I just found it interesting when I was scrolling through the data. So I just found it very simple because I could just click on the next button on the database and just click from page to page for each state, and it was easy to compare the data. So I thought that worked really well for finding all the information in one place. So for the peer information, I do want to thank everybody, but for the subrecipients, I found that in looking at the peer information, I thought that was really useful also for our state subrecipients, because a lot of times there will be a unique transit provider in your state who may be doing things that don't compare to the other transit agencies in your state. But by using that peer comparison tool, it's pretty simple to find other agencies that are similar or performing similarly in other areas of the country that maybe you could ask questions of or compare yourself to, or get the contact information for, and just have conversations about what they're doing and how they're dealing with different things. So I think that's really useful as well, because sometimes in smaller states where there's not as many transit agencies, there may not truly be peers performing the same way that someone else is. So that's what I found useful, is being able to compare state over state really quickly in the iNTD. And I think that'll be useful for the subrecipients that are out there providing services. So anyway, I thank you for the opportunity to let me share how we use a lot of this information above and beyond NTD even. So I think we can take questions if there are any.
Nancy, if I can have a couple more minutes and do.
Well done. We have just about 6 minutes left, and we did have 2 questions that both the panelists should be able to see in the chat. The first one being, yes, we will we'll have this webinar, the recording of it, posted probably within a day or 2, as well as the presentation that you saw, the actual slides. So the recording would show the demonstration, and then the slides would be a PDF of that. There was a question, Kristen, I don't, maybe this is a better question for Albert. Albert, can you read that one? Does the iNTD or Kristen at the state level review offer any display of a data element that may be out of range? I wonder if that's done more at the NTD level, because we just basically take that data from the NTD and put it in the iNTD, but I don't know if you had, either one of you had a thought on that question.
Just reading it here.
Yeah,
This is probably more beyond me.
I think that's more at an NTD
Routes.
level. There's a problem with the data entry. Are there any other
I guess
questions?
I would say that probably is something that the data analyst at the NTD level would have missed.
Flagged, should have
Um,
flagged.
Yeah, or should have flagged. Yeah, I'm not sure about the specific information, but yeah, that's something that looks like just a fat finger entry or something.
Nancy,
Yes,
I think I forgot to show the recipient data. Maybe if I have a couple of minutes and
sure.
yeah, just very quickly, if I can show my screen.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So here is a maybe I'll quick do a fact check of what Christine just said. So I will select the state and select all the state. And these are all the, I guess I don't need, okay, so okay, very quickly and variables. The variables that Christine was talking about was this variable here. Let me remove this and click on, oops, it's not.
It was the other one right below it.
Yeah, the next one, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so you go here and I just retrieve the data and do a cross table very quickly. And so this is from 2015, 2021. You can see this is the recipient 5311 expanded on state administrations, right? And if you look at Iowa and right, it's nothing, right? You didn't spend any.
Nope.
And of course, there are some other state, but not in the surrounding state of Iowa and Connecticut, for example. And some year they spend and some year they don't. So about 4 or 5 states that didn't spend any 5311 money. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So and you can also do a average total. And you can see here very quickly, right, the total amount spent has increased over the years. The average is also increasing. Okay, so maybe due to inflation.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting that there's only 2 of us totally that have nothing across the board there for those 6 years or so. Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay.
I'm sure your sub-recipients appreciate that.
Well, right. Yeah. We dole it all out. Yeah.
All set, Albert?
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
And I did have a question from someone in the actual Q&A about whether or not, or how we assessed our vehicle condition and what we used for it. And that was from Joaquim Bean. So if Joaquim wants to just enter their email address or something, or we can get that from National RTAP, I can send that information to you, the vehicle condition assessment that we use.
Yeah, I've got it. It's from Iowa, and I'll send it to you in the chat.
Okay.
Any other questions? I think you guys did a great job. It was so clear to me that I'm not going to go to the NTD database when I want information. I'm going to go to the iNTD. So much easier to use, so much more organized. Thanks to Albert's great programming skills. It's a great.
It's just at your fingertips. It's so fast to use. Yeah, it's a really useful tool.
And I put in the chat a few minutes ago, kind of the link, National RTAP resources, the iNTD, but the link's there if you wanted to take a peek. So we are going to wrap up. We only have like a minute left. Just very quickly, we do have some cool webinars or events coming up, a client self-advocacy training webinar. It's very important for transportation and mobility professionals. They play an important role in helping people and they need to also advocate for themselves to get their transportation needs met. And then there's the Transit Managers Peer Roundtable. It's an informative roundtable discussion among transit managers about training focused topics that I think could be very interesting. We always like to show this slide about Tackle. We are the leader of the Technical Assistance Coordination Library, which provides sustainable methodology and a platform for information on rural and tribal coordination. The library contains information from FTA and all of its technical assistance centers, and you can find it at transportation-tackle.org. And then finally, I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a national conference coming up in Myrtle Beach, which is going to be so awesome. We're right on the beach. But amazing sessions and speakers and keynote speakers at the conference. We're very excited about it, and we really hope you'll join us. There'll be, oh, and I should tell you that the Tribal Transit Award nominations and student poster contests are open, and you can find that on that website, which is on the slide there, but certainly available on our website. And the last but not least, I just want to remind people there will be a 30-second survey that'll pop up when I close this webinar in about 2 seconds. And we would really appreciate it if you could just take a few seconds and complete it. Your feedback helps us improve and do a better job next time. So we really appreciate that. So thank you again to Kristen and Albert. Great job. Really appreciated you guys stepping up and doing this. And I wish you all a good rest of your day.